My name is Lila Monroe, and I've always believed that innovation doesn't just come from the top. It springs from every corner of a team. I've spent years climbing the corporate ladder, fueled by a passion for technology and a desire to bring fresh ideas to life. I was the head of the product development team at a rising tech startup, and I felt the weight of my ambition each day. But nothing could prepare me for the moment my ideas would not just be dismissed, but openly mocked in front of my colleagues and the upper management. It was a day that would change everything, both for me and for the man who dared to undermine my vision. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning when I stood in the conference room, my heart pounding with excitement as I prepared to unveil a revolutionary concept I believed could propel our company into the future. I had spent countless hours researching market trends, gathering data, and refining my pitch. With every slide I created, I envisioned the product that could redefine our brand. I could already see the faces of our investors lighting up with interest. But as I looked around the room, my gaze landed on Marcus, the senior vice president of operations. He was known for his sharp tongue and even sharper critiques, but I never anticipated how brutal he would be. As I presented my ideas, bold, innovative solutions that I was sure would impress, the smirk on Marcus's face grew wider. I could feel the tension in the room, a palpable mix of anticipation and skepticism. Then, without warning, Marcus interrupted me. "Lila, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but do you really think this is what our clients want? This sounds more like a fantasy than a business strategy." The laughter that followed pierced through me like a knife. I tried to shake it off, to push through my presentation, but every word that came out felt like it was getting swallowed by a void. "Are we really going to spend resources on this? I mean, come on, let's be realistic," he continued, his tone dripping with condescension. My cheeks burned as I looked around the room. Some colleagues shifted awkwardly in their seats, while others exchanged glances, unsure of how to respond. I had poured my heart into this project, and here I was, being reduced to a punchline. What would you have done in that moment? Let me know below. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the wave of embarrassment crashing over me. "I believe this can work, Marcus. The data supports it," I replied, trying to maintain my composure. But he wasn't done. "Data? Lila, what you have is a dream, not a strategy. It's cute, but let's leave the dreaming to the kids." The laughter erupted again, and with it, the confidence I had built up over years began to crumble. That meeting felt like a turning point, not just for my career, but for my sense of self. I left the room with my head held high, but my heart heavy. I could hear the whispers behind me, the murmurs of doubt creeping back in. Did you see her face? She really thought she could convince us. Each comment felt like a weight added to my shoulders, and I knew I had a choice to make. I could either let Marcus's mockery define me, or I could use it as fuel to prove him wrong. I spent the next few days in a whirlwind of reflection and determination. I revisited my research, pored over market analyses, and sought feedback from others who shared my vision. I started to see how Marcus's derision could be transformed into something powerful. Instead of retreating, I doubled down on my proposal, refining it further and adding layers of depth that could not be easily dismissed. Then, as fate would have it, our company found itself in the midst of a critical transitional phase. Our main investor was coming in for a review, and we were all set to present our projects and strategies for the future. The stakes were higher than ever, and I realized this was my chance to reclaim my narrative. If I could impress our investor, maybe, just maybe, I could change the trajectory of my career and of the company. As I prepared for that pivotal meeting, I noticed a shift in the office dynamics. Colleagues who had once laughed at my ideas began to approach me, intrigued by the revisions I was making. I shared my updated strategy with a few trusted team members, and their enthusiasm reignited my own. They saw the merit in my vision, and it fueled my resolve. The day of the meeting approached, and I felt an energy coursing through me that I hadn't felt before. When the day finally arrived, I stood before our investor, my heart racing but my spirit unyielding. I delivered my presentation with confidence, knowing that I had taken every jab, every sneer, and turned it into a polished proposal that encapsulated the future of our company. I watched the investor nod, his eyes lighting up with interest. As I concluded, the room buzzed with discussions about potential implementations and next steps. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it was quickly replaced by a surge of adrenaline. I had done it. I had turned the tide. Little did I know, the ripples of that day would extend far beyond just a single presentation. The story was far from over, and I was about to discover just how significant that moment would become. Not just for me, but for Marcus too. What happens when someone who once belittled your dreams finds himself on the wrong side of your success? That question would soon unravel in ways I never imagined. As I walked out of the conference room, the air felt electrified. The whispers of excitement from the team behind me swirled around, but I couldn't fully process it. I was too lost in my thoughts, replaying the investors' encouraging nods and the way my ideas had sparked animated discussions. It was surreal, but reality hit when I realized I needed to prepare for the fallout. I had seen the way Marcus's face twisted with disdain during my presentation. The next morning, I walked into the office with a strange mix of anticipation and dread. The atmosphere felt different. People greeted me with an air of respect I hadn't felt before. It was as if my victory had shifted the dynamics in our small company. But I knew Marcus wouldn't go down quietly. I braced myself for the inevitable confrontation. When I walked past his office, I caught a glimpse of him through the glass. He was pacing, phone in hand, his brow furrowed. I could only imagine the conversations he was having, probably trying to discredit me to anyone who would listen. It was a tactic I had seen him use before, but now I was resolved not to let it get to me. I had worked too hard to let his insecurity derail my progress. As the day unfolded, I found myself in a series of meetings, brainstorming sessions with the team about the next steps for our project. For the first time, I felt like the ideas I presented were being taken seriously. They weren't just my ideas anymore. They were our ideas, and everyone was contributing. It was invigorating. I felt like a conductor guiding a symphony, watching as the team harmonized together, building off each other's strengths. But it was during lunch that the tension reached a boiling point. I sat at a table with a few colleagues, discussing our plans when Marcus stormed in. His voice cut through the chatter like a knife. "Did you really think you could just waltz in there and take charge?" he spat, his eyes darting around the table as if searching for allies. I took a deep breath, determined to remain composed. "I believe in what I presented, Marcus. The investor saw potential. We all did." He laughed, a harsh sound that made my stomach turn. "Potential? You mean you convinced him to buy into your fairy tale? Let's see how long that lasts." I could feel the tension in the room thicken. It was as if everyone held their breath, waiting for my response. I wanted to let it roll off my back, to dismiss him, but I also wanted to stand my ground. "This isn't about me, Marcus. It's about what's best for the company. Can't you see that?" He leaned in, his face inches from mine, his voice low and venomous. "Best for the company or best for you? You have no idea what it takes to run a business." Before I could respond, someone at the table cut in. "That's not fair, Marcus. She's leading us into a new era. We should be supporting her." That moment felt pivotal. It was a small act of defiance against Marcus, but it was enough to shake him. He straightened up, visibly taken aback, and glanced around the table. "Whatever. You'll all see. This is a mistake." With that, he stormed out, leaving a palpable silence in his wake. I could hardly believe it. I was proud of my team for standing up, but I also felt a knot of unease. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the whole company and the toxic environment Marcus had cultivated. I realized then that I had a choice to make. I could either let Marcus's hostility define my journey or rise above it and lead with confidence. In the following weeks, things escalated. Marcus became increasingly aggressive, spreading rumors about me to our colleagues and questioning my decisions in meetings. At first, I thought about confronting him directly, but I realized that engaging with him only fueled his fire. Instead, I poured all my energy into our project, focusing on developing our strategy and collaborating with the team. I started to build rapport with the investors, setting up meetings to discuss our progress and gain their insights. It felt empowering, and the more I immersed myself in the work, the more I found my footing as a leader. I could sense the shift in the office culture, too. People were more willing to speak up, share ideas, and rally around our shared vision. But even as we gained momentum, I knew Marcus was plotting. One afternoon, I overheard him on a call with a former colleague, someone I had always respected. I heard him disparaging my leadership style, questioning my qualifications, and even suggesting that the team would be better off without me. I felt the heat rise in my chest. It was one thing to have a disagreement, it was another to undermine my authority to others. That evening, I sat in my car outside the office, heart racing as I pondered my next steps. I knew I had to confront Marcus, but I needed to be strategic about it. This wasn't just about defending myself. It was about the future of our company. I had to approach this with the same confidence I had during my presentation. The next day, I walked into the office with a clear plan. I summoned all my courage and requested a meeting with Marcus. I wanted to address his behavior head-on, but I also wanted to do it professionally. I prepared my points carefully, focusing on the impact his actions could have on the team's morale and our collective success. When we finally sat down, I looked him in the eye. "Marcus, we need to talk. I can't allow this behavior to continue. It's affecting the team and our project. We should be working together, not against each other." His expression was a mix of surprise and disdain, but I pressed on. "I know you're frustrated, but I need you to understand that my intention is to drive this company forward. Your support would mean a lot. We can achieve greatness if we put aside our differences." He scoffed, but I held my ground. I was ready for this conversation, and I wouldn't back down. I had come too far to let anyone, including him, distract me from my goals. As I left his office, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had confronted him, but I also knew this wasn't over. The real test was still ahead, and I had to stay focused. The battle for our company's future had just begun, and I was ready to fight for it. I spent the next few days immersed in my work, trying to drown out the noise Marcus created. I focused on the upcoming presentation to our investors, the one that could change everything for us. I was determined to show them that my vision for the company was not just a dream, but a feasible plan that could lead us to success. Each late night in the office was fueled by coffee and the thrill of what was at stake. I worked tirelessly, crafting slides that told a story of innovation, resilience, and potential growth. It wasn't just about numbers. It was about the people behind those numbers, our team, our clients, and the future we could build together. Meanwhile, Marcus was still making waves. He seemed determined to undermine me at every turn. He'd throw side comments during meetings, questioning my decisions, and even trying to rally some team members to his side. It was frustrating to watch. I had always believed in open communication and collaboration, yet here he was, trying to sow discord. But I refused to let his antics distract me. I knew I had to rise above it, even if it meant facing some uncomfortable truths about leadership and the nature of competition. As the days rolled on, I gathered more insights from my colleagues. Many expressed their concern over Marcus's behavior and were supportive of my leadership approach. It was heartening to know that I wasn't alone in this battle. I organized informal brainstorming sessions, inviting team members to share their ideas and collaborate on solutions. I wanted to create an environment where everyone felt heard and valued. Slowly, I could see the atmosphere shift. People were excited to contribute, and that spark was exactly what we needed. However, it wasn't just the team dynamics I had to manage. I was constantly preparing for the investor meeting. I reached out to mentors for advice, practiced my pitch until I could recite it in my sleep, and even rehearsed in front of a mirror. I needed to convey not just confidence, but passion. I had to make them believe in my vision as much as I did. The day of the presentation arrived. I dressed in my best suit, the one I always wore when I wanted to feel invincible. As I walked into the conference room, I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. The room was filled with important faces, investors who held the key to our future. I set up my laptop, my hands shaking slightly as I connected it to the projector. I could feel Marcus's eyes on me, and it only fueled my determination. As I began my presentation, I noticed a shift. The investors leaned in, their expressions changing from skepticism to interest. I spoke passionately about our project, highlighting the strengths of our team and the strategies we'd implemented to navigate our challenges. I made sure to emphasize our adaptability and the innovative solutions we had developed. I felt the energy in the room change. They were engaging with my vision. Towards the end of my presentation, I opened the floor for questions. I could see Marcus fidgeting in his seat, probably bracing himself for an opportunity to counter my points. But to my surprise, the investors were overwhelmingly supportive. They asked insightful questions that allowed me to showcase even more of our strengths. I felt like I was in my element, and with every answer I gave, my confidence grew. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. One of the lead investors, a woman I deeply respected, leaned forward and said, "I believe in your vision. I see the potential here, and I think you're the right person to lead this company into the next chapter." My heart skipped a beat. I could feel Marcus's gaze burning into me, filled with disbelief and resentment. After the meeting, I was on cloud 9. I felt like I had finally gained the recognition I had worked so hard for. The investors were not just backing my ideas, but were also endorsing me as their choice for CEO. It was a surreal moment, filled with disbelief and overwhelming joy. But I knew I had to navigate this new reality carefully. As I exited the conference room, I heard Marcus muttering to himself, his frustration palpable. I tried to ignore him, but I could feel the tension in the air. He stormed past me, and I caught a glimpse of the fury etched across his face. The next few days were a whirlwind. I was inundated with congratulations from my team, but I also knew that with this new title came new challenges. I had to navigate the transition smoothly while keeping everyone motivated and focused on our goals. I gathered the team together for a meeting. I wanted to express my gratitude and share my vision for the future now that we had the backing we needed. "Thank you all for believing in this project," I began, my voice steady. "We've worked so hard to get to this point, and I want you to know that this isn't just my victory, it's ours. We will continue to innovate, to push boundaries, and to support each other. Together, we can make this company thrive." The room erupted in applause, and I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. But even amidst the celebration, I couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus was still lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike back. I had to remain vigilant. The battle was far from over, and I was prepared to defend my vision, my team, and my leadership with everything I had. As the applause faded, I felt the weight of my new position settling on my shoulders. It was exhilarating, yet daunting. I had always wanted to be a leader, but now I had to prove that I could truly lead. I had a vision for our company, one that I believed could make a significant impact in our industry. But visions alone don't drive success. Execution does. I knew I had to hit the ground running. The first order of business was to establish a clear roadmap for our project. I spent hours drafting plans, outlining milestones, and identifying potential roadblocks. I wanted to be proactive, to anticipate challenges before they arose. As I worked, I could feel the energy in the office shift. People were excited, motivated by the promise of what we could achieve together. I made it a point to check in with everyone regularly, ensuring they felt heard and included in the decision-making process. But Marcus, oh Marcus, he didn't just fade into the background. He began to undermine me, subtly at first. I would walk into a meeting and I could sense the tension in the air. He would smirk, throw in sarcastic comments, or even roll his eyes when I presented my ideas. It was as if he thought he could intimidate me into silence, that I would back down. But I refused to let him dictate my narrative. One afternoon, during a particularly critical meeting with the team, I presented a new strategy that I was confident would increase our outreach. I had spent days researching, crafting every detail. When I finished, I looked around the room, seeing nods of approval. But there it was again. Marcus's voice cutting through the positivity like a knife. "That's cute, but do you really think that's realistic? It sounds like a pipe dream to me." His words hung heavy in the air. I could feel my pulse quickening as I fought to maintain my composure. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was the CEO now. Actually, Marcus, I believe it's not only realistic, but it's also necessary for our growth. If we don't push ourselves to think bigger, we'll never achieve our full potential. I could see some of the team members shifting uncomfortably, caught in the crossfire. After the meeting, I sought out a few of my colleagues, wanting to gauge their reactions. "You handled that well," one of them said, a hint of admiration in their voice. "I've seen people crumble under Marcus's criticism, but you stood your ground." I appreciated the compliment, but I knew this wasn't just about me. It was about fostering a culture where everyone felt safe to express their ideas without fear of ridicule. As days turned into weeks, I made it a point to highlight our team's accomplishments in our internal newsletters and meetings. I wanted to create an environment where collaboration thrived over competition. The more I focused on building my team up, the more I realized how much their support meant to me. We were all in this together, and I was determined to cultivate that spirit. But Marcus wasn't just a thorn in my side. He was a serious threat. I started to hear whispers of dissatisfaction among some of the staff. They were torn between loyalty to me and their long-standing relationships with Marcus. It was clear that he had his supporters, and I needed to approach the situation delicately. I decided to arrange one-on-one meetings with those who seemed uncertain, hoping to understand their concerns. During one of those meetings, I sat across from Jenna, a talented developer who had been with the company for years. "I just don't want to choose sides," she confessed, fidgeting with her hands. "Marcus has been here so long, and I respect him. I'm not sure how to navigate this." I nodded, appreciating her honesty. "I get that, Jenna. It's tough when there's a divide. But I want you to know that my door is always open. Your voice matters, and I value your contributions. We can only move forward if we're all on the same page." As our conversation progressed, I could see her demeanor shifting. She began to share her ideas, and I could feel the tension ease. By the end of our talk, she left with a smile, and I felt hopeful that I had made a small step in bridging the gap. But just when I thought things were settling down, Marcus escalated his tactics. He started spreading rumors about my leadership, questioning my qualifications and decisions. I began to hear snippets of conversations where people whispered doubts about my ability to lead. It was disheartening, to say the least. One evening, as I was working late, I overheard a couple of employees discussing the latest gossip. "Can you believe she was chosen over Marcus? It's like a joke," one said. My heart sank. I took a moment to compose myself. I knew I had to address this head-on. I called for an all-hands meeting the following week. As I stood in front of my team, I felt a mix of nerves and determination. "I want to talk about something that's been bothering me," I began. "I've heard that there are doubts about my leadership and the direction we're headed. I won't pretend that I have all the answers, but I am committed to this team and our vision. I need your support, and I want us to be open with one another. If you have concerns, let's discuss them, not behind closed doors, but together." The room was silent, and I could feel the weight of my words hanging in the air. I hoped I had struck a chord. I wanted to foster an atmosphere of transparency and trust. As the meeting wrapped up, I noticed a few nods and even smiles from some of my team members. Perhaps, just perhaps, I was starting to turn the tide. As I walked out of the conference room, I felt a flicker of hope igniting within me. It was as if the weight of uncertainty that had been pressing down on my shoulders was starting to lift. I knew change wouldn't happen overnight, but I was determined to keep building on this momentum. The next few days felt like a whirlwind. I spent hours in meetings with different departments, genuinely listening to the concerns of my colleagues. I wanted to understand their perspectives, their fears, and their aspirations for our company. Every conversation was a reminder of why I had taken this path in the first place. I had a vision for our company, a vision that I believed could transform our work environment and ultimately our success. One afternoon, as I was reviewing feedback from the marketing team, I found an email from one of my newer team members, Sarah. She had shared some innovative ideas for our upcoming product launch, ideas that aligned perfectly with our mission but had been overlooked. I was thrilled. This was the kind of enthusiasm I wanted to cultivate in our workplace. I decided to call a brainstorming session, inviting everyone to contribute their thoughts without fear of judgment. The room was filled with energy as ideas flowed freely. It was the first time in a long while that I felt a genuine sense of collaboration among the team. Sarah's ideas sparked discussions that led to even more creativity. I could see it in their eyes. They were excited and invested in what we were creating together. But as the days turned into weeks, the shadow of Marcus loomed larger. He had gone quiet, but I could feel his resentment simmering beneath the surface. It was unsettling to think about how he had once been a leader in the company and now seemed to harbor a grudge. One afternoon, I was in my office when I heard a knock on the door. It was Marcus. My heart raced. I wasn't sure what to expect. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice steady but his expression unreadable. I nodded, gesturing for him to sit down. The air was thick with tension as he leaned back in the chair, crossing his arms. "I wanted to check in on you," he said, his tone surprisingly neutral. "I know it's been a rough transition." "Thanks, Marcus. I appreciate that," I replied, trying to keep my tone light, but I could sense the underlying hostility. "I really want to make this work for everyone." He shrugged, and for a moment I thought he might actually offer some constructive feedback. Instead, he leaned forward and said, "Just remember, this isn't just a popularity contest. You need to deliver results." I could feel my pulse quicken. "I understand that, and I'm committed to making sure we do just that." "Good," he said with a hint of a smirk. "Just make sure you're not overstepping. People have long memories." With that, he stood up and walked out, leaving me reeling. I knew he was referring to the past and how he had once been at the helm, but I was determined not to let his words shake my resolve. I had to focus on what mattered, building a team that trusted one another and believed in our mission. In the weeks that followed, I implemented a series of team-building activities and workshops aimed at fostering collaboration and open communication. I wanted to create a culture where everyone felt valued, where everyone's ideas mattered. Slowly but surely, I could see changes taking shape. Our sales numbers were starting to rise, and the energy in the office was shifting. One afternoon, as I was reviewing our quarterly report, I felt a rush of pride. The numbers reflected not just hard work, but the collective effort of a team that was finally beginning to gel. I decided to share the good news in our next all-hands meeting. As I stood in front of my team, I could see their faces filled with anticipation. "I'm thrilled to share that our sales have increased by 20% this quarter," I announced, and the room erupted in applause. "This is a direct result of your hard work and dedication. We've come together to create something special, and I couldn't be prouder to lead this team." As the applause faded, I noticed Marcus sitting at the back, his expression unreadable. I had to remind myself to focus on the positives and not dwell on his potential resentment. The meeting ended, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. But the relief was short-lived. The following week, I received an email from our board of directors requesting an urgent meeting. My stomach dropped. I had to remind myself that I was making progress and that I was doing everything I could to lead effectively. When I arrived at the meeting, I found the board members waiting for me, their expressions serious. "Thank you for joining us on short notice," one of them began. "We've been monitoring the changes since your appointment, and we're impressed with your leadership so far." Relief flooded through me momentarily, but I could sense the underlying tension in the room. "However," the board member continued, "there are still concerns regarding the stability of the team and how they're handling the transition. We need to ensure that everyone is on board with the new direction." My heart raced. I knew I had to convince them that I was capable of leading this team through the storm. "I understand your concerns," I said, drawing on every ounce of confidence. "But I believe in the direction we're headed, and I have faith in my team. We're making real progress, and I'm committed to fostering a culture of trust and collaboration." The board members exchanged glances, and I held my breath, hoping my words resonated with them. It was a pivotal moment, one that could either make or break my leadership. As I looked around the room, I could see a flicker of interest in their eyes. Maybe, just maybe, I was turning the tide. I took a deep breath and pressed on. I know change is difficult, but this is an opportunity for us to innovate and evolve. We've already seen the positive impact of our recent projects. The new marketing strategy is generating buzz, and our clients are responding positively. We can't lose sight of that momentum. I could feel the weight of their scrutiny, each member weighing my words against their own doubts. What specific measures are you implementing to ensure the team stays aligned with this vision? One of the board members asked, raising an eyebrow. I was ready for this question. We're holding weekly check-ins to assess progress and address any concerns. I've also initiated open forums where team members can voice their ideas and feedback. Everyone's input is valuable, and I want them to feel empowered. Their nods seemed less skeptical now. I pressed further. Additionally, I'm working on developing mentorship programs to help newer employees integrate better into our culture. I believe in leading by example, and I want to show them that their growth is a priority for us. A sense of determination surged within me. I could see the initial concerns transforming into cautious optimism. That sounds promising, another member remarked. But what about the concerns regarding Jason? How do you plan to address the discord within the team? The mention of Jason felt like a punch to the gut. I had almost forgotten about him, but his presence loomed large in the back of my mind. I'm aware of the issues he's caused. I've had conversations with him about the importance of collaboration. I believe he's capable of change, but if not, we'll have to make tougher decisions for the sake of the team. Are you prepared for that? One of the board members questioned, leaning forward in their chair. I am, I responded, my voice steady. I won't let anyone hold us back from reaching our potential. The team's morale is my priority, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect it. The board members shared another glance, and I felt like I was in a high-stakes poker game, desperately hoping my hand was good enough to win. Finally, the chairperson spoke. We'll give you a chance, but we want to see tangible progress in the next quarter. We'll reconvene then. With that, the meeting concluded, and I walked out feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. I had convinced them to give me a shot, but the pressure was only just beginning. The weight of their expectations hung heavy on my shoulders as I made my way back to my office. When I stepped inside, I found my team gathered, their faces a blend of excitement and uncertainty. How did it go? Sarah, one of my closest allies, asked, her eyes wide with anticipation. I think it went well, I replied, though I wasn't entirely sure. They're willing to give us a chance, but we need to show them results. There were murmurs of agreement around the room, but I could still sense the lingering tension. I gathered everyone's attention. I want to thank you all for your hard work. We're on the cusp of something great, but we need to rally together. We've faced challenges before, and we can overcome this too. Jason was noticeably absent, and a part of me wondered if he was still sulking over his loss of influence. I was determined not to let him disrupt our momentum. I'll be scheduling one-on-ones with each of you over the next few days to discuss how we can move forward together. Your insights are crucial. The team nodded, but I could see doubts flickering in their eyes. I knew Jason had sown seeds of discontent, and it was my job to pull them out before they took root. As the day wore on, I found myself deep in thought, mapping out strategies for our next steps. I needed to regain control of the narrative and show everyone that I was not just capable, but the right choice for the job. I reached out to Sarah, knowing she would offer honest feedback. Do you think we can really turn this around? I asked her, the weight of the question heavy in the air. She looked at me thoughtfully. I believe we can, but we need to be united. Jason's influence is still strong, and if we don't address it, it could undermine everything. I know, I admitted. But how do we do that without escalating the situation? She shrugged, her expression contemplative. Maybe we need to involve him in the process. Give him a role that makes him feel valued, but still holds him accountable. Her suggestion struck a chord with me. What if we create a project that requires his expertise? It could show him that he's still an important part of the team, while also reinforcing that I'm in charge. Sarah smiled, and for the first time since the board meeting, I felt a flicker of hope. That could work. Just remember to set clear boundaries. I spent the next few days drafting a plan, working late into the night, fueled by caffeine and determination. When I finally presented the idea to the team, their reactions were overwhelmingly positive. I could see them rallying around the vision, and it felt like a tidal wave of energy was building. But as I prepared to approach Jason with the proposal, an unsettling feeling settled in my stomach. I knew he wouldn't take kindly to being sidelined, but I had to believe that my approach would work. After all, I was not just leading, I was transforming. The next day, I found Jason in his office, staring blankly at his computer screen. My heart raced as I knocked on the door. "Hey, can we talk?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. He looked up, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the old Jason, the one who had been so enthusiastic about the company's mission. "Sure," he replied, though I could sense the tension in his voice. As I began to outline my plans, I could see his demeanor shift from defensive to intrigued, but I knew it would take more than just a good idea to win him over. I needed to convince him that we were in this together, that his expertise was still valued, and that there was a place for him in this new vision. "Let's collaborate on this project," I suggested, gauging his reaction. "Your experience could really bring this to life." For a moment, he was silent. "You really think I can contribute?" I nodded. "Absolutely. We need you on this team, and I want to make sure you feel that." The tension in the room began to ease, and for the first time, I saw a glimpse of the Jason I had known. "All right, let's give it a shot," he finally said, a reluctant smile breaking through. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. I left his office feeling a renewed sense of purpose. I had faced my fears, confronted the doubts, and reached out to him, and now it was time to turn our team's vision into reality. As the weeks went by, I poured my heart into this project, fostering collaboration and creativity. Slowly but surely, the team began to gel, and we started to see real progress. The board members had set their expectations, but I was determined to exceed them. I was no longer just the underdog. I was becoming a leader they could rally behind. But even as we moved forward, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was still ahead. Jason's support was a step in the right direction, but I knew that trust was fragile, and one misstep could shatter everything. As I continued to invest in my team, I realized that leadership wasn't just about making decisions. It was about nurturing relationships, building bridges, and fostering an environment where everyone felt empowered. And I was ready to do just that, no matter the cost. Every morning, I would sit at my desk with a steaming cup of coffee, staring at the whiteboard filled with ideas, goals, and reminders. The excitement in the office was palpable. We were in the thick of brainstorming sessions, each idea sparking another, igniting a fire of creativity that I never wanted to extinguish. But along with that excitement came a nagging anxiety. What if I let them down? What if the board didn't approve of our vision? One afternoon, while we were deep in discussion about our marketing strategy, I noticed a sense of hesitance in the room. It was as if everyone suddenly became aware of the stakes. I decided to address the elephant in the room. "Hey, I know this project means a lot to all of us, and the pressure can be overwhelming. How do you all feel about what we're creating together?" I was met with a mix of nods and sheepish glances. It was clear that my team was feeling the weight of our collective ambition. I understood that pressure all too well. I had spent years doubting myself, and I didn't want my team to feel that same fear of failure. I encouraged them to voice their concerns, to share their thoughts without holding back. What I found was a rush of relief as they began to open up. One of my teammates, Mia, expressed her worry about the timeline. "What if we don't meet the deadlines? What happens then?" I saw the anxiety in her eyes. I could relate. We were all juggling deadlines, expectations, and the constant pressure to perform. "I hear you, Mia. It's a lot to handle. But I believe in this team and what we're creating together. If we communicate openly and support each other, we can navigate this," I replied, trying to instill some confidence. As the weeks passed, we fell into a rhythm. I began to see the strengths of my team members shine through. Mark was a wizard with data, always finding insights that shaped our decisions. Lisa had a gift for storytelling, crafting our narrative in ways that resonated deeply with our audience. And then there was Jason, who, despite being a tough critic, had a knack for pushing us to think outside the box. I made it a point to recognize everyone's contributions, to make sure each team member felt valued. I would often say, "We're all in this together, and no idea is too small to matter." It was essential to cultivate an environment where everyone felt they could take risks without fear of failure. However, with each passing day, the pressure intensified. The board meetings loomed closer, and I could feel the weight of our aspirations pressing down. I often found myself lying awake at night, my mind racing with thoughts of what could go wrong. I wondered, am I really cut out for this? What would happen if I stumbled? Then came the fateful day when we were finally ready to present our project to the board. I remember standing in front of the mirror, adjusting my blazer and practicing my speech, my heart pounding in my chest. "You've got this," I whispered to myself. I could feel the energy from my team behind me, a mix of nerves and excitement. I took a deep breath and walked into the room, greeted by the expectant faces of the board members. As I spoke, I could see their reactions. Some nodded, some furrowed their brows in thought. I highlighted the unique aspects of our project, the hard work we had all put in, and the passion that fueled our vision. The presentation was going well, but I could sense the tension in the air. Then it happened. A board member asked a question that threw me off guard. "How do you plan to handle potential setbacks?" In that moment, I felt the collective breath of my team behind me. They were looking to me for an answer. I paused, searching for the right words. My heart raced, but I realized this was my moment to be authentic. We acknowledge that setbacks are a part of any journey. What sets us apart is our commitment to learning and adapting. Our team thrives on collaboration, and we believe that together we can navigate any challenges that come our way, I said, my voice steadying as I spoke from the heart. After what felt like an eternity, I could see the board members nodding. They were engaged, and my team seemed to exhale collectively. We finished the presentation, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. We had shared our vision, and for the first time, I felt like a true leader. But the true test was still ahead. As we left the boardroom, Jason pulled me aside. "You did good, but the real work is just beginning. Be ready for the pushback," he warned. I appreciated his honesty, but a part of me was hopeful. Had we truly made an impact? A few days later, we received the board's feedback. They were impressed, but had some concerns. Their suggestions were valid, and I knew we would need to address them head-on. I gathered my team, ready to tackle the feedback together. This is our chance to refine our vision. "How do you all feel about the board's suggestions?" I asked, wanting to hear their thoughts. "What would you have done in my position? Let me know below." As we discussed the board's comments, I saw determination in my teammates' eyes. They were ready to roll up their sleeves and dive back in. I was reminded that this was not just my journey. It was ours. Together, we would rise to the challenge, bound by our collective passion and commitment. We were on the brink of something great, and I could feel the momentum building. As we delved deeper into the board's feedback, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. Each suggestion they made seemed like a stepping stone, a chance to refine our strategy and make our vision even stronger. "Let's take a look at this from their perspective," I suggested, wanting to ensure we approached this constructively. I encouraged my team to voice their thoughts freely, knowing that collaboration was key to our success. Annie, our marketing lead, chimed in first. "I think they're right about the branding. We need to be more distinctive. It's time to make a statement." Her enthusiasm was contagious, and I nodded, feeling the energy in the room shift. Ideas flowed like water as we brainstormed new approaches, from creative campaigns to innovative product features. Then, Mark, our tech guru, raised a point I hadn't considered. We also need to ensure our tech is scalable. If we're going to attract major investors, we must show we can handle growth. His insight was spot on, and it prompted a discussion about potential hurdles we might face down the road. The more we talked, the more I realized how every team member brought something unique to the table. As we worked through the feedback, I felt a surge of hope. We were building something special together. By the end of the meeting, we had a solid plan in place, one that incorporated the board's suggestions while still staying true to our original vision. I could see the spark in my teammates' eyes. They were invested in this journey, and that made all the difference. Over the next few weeks, we put our heads down and executed our plan. The energy in the office was electric, and the camaraderie among the team grew stronger with every challenge we faced. I found myself spending more time with each member, learning their strengths and weaknesses, and figuring out how to support them better. But then, just as I was starting to feel like everything was falling into place, a shadow loomed over our progress. Jason called an emergency meeting one afternoon, and the tension in the air was palpable. "We've got some troubling news," he began, and I could sense my heart begin to race. It turned out that a rival company had launched a similar product just days before our scheduled release. They had a massive marketing budget, and the buzz around their launch was deafening. I could hear the murmurs of concern from my team as Jason laid out the implications. "We need to act fast. We can't let this derail us," he urged, his tone firm but encouraging. I took a deep breath and faced my team. "I know this is daunting, but we've already proven we can adapt. Let's focus on what makes us unique. We have a story to tell, and we have the passion to back it up." I could see their determination returning, even in the face of this setback. We spent the next few days brainstorming ideas on how to differentiate ourselves from the competition. Every member contributed something valuable, and soon we were crafting a campaign that told our story in a way that resonated with our audience. I felt a rush of excitement as we worked late into the night, fueled by coffee and our collective drive to succeed. Finally, we settled on a launch plan that highlighted our core values and unique offerings. We decided to create a series of videos that showcased our team's dedication and the passion behind our product. I was tasked with leading the project, and as I stood in front of the camera for the first time, I felt a mix of nerves and exhilaration. "Hi, I'm your name, and I want to share our journey with you," I began, my voice steadying as I spoke. I poured my heart into that video, detailing our vision and what set us apart from the competition. It was raw, honest, and I hoped it would resonate with our audience. Once we released the videos, the response was overwhelming. People connected with our story, and soon we began to see a surge in interest. The initial anxiety I felt transformed into hope as I read the comments and saw the shares multiply. We were becoming a movement, and it felt incredible to be at the forefront of it. However, not everyone was on board with our progress. I could sense that some members of the executive team were still skeptical of our approach, particularly those who had previously dismissed my ideas. They were concerned about the trajectory we were taking and whether it would lead to success. I knew I had to prove myself to them, to show them that I was capable of leading this team to victory. In the midst of this uncertainty, I received a surprising email from the board. They wanted to meet again to discuss our progress and the recent developments. My heart raced with anticipation, but I also felt a knot of dread in my stomach. Would they see the potential in what we were doing, or would they continue to doubt my leadership? As I prepared for the meeting, I reminded myself of everything we had accomplished together. We had weathered storms, adapted to challenges, and fostered a sense of unity within our team. I knew I had to channel that energy into the upcoming discussion. With each passing moment, I became more determined to showcase not just our success, but the strength of our team and the passion that drove us. When the day finally arrived, I took a deep breath and walked into the boardroom, my team by my side. We were ready to face whatever came our way, united and stronger than ever. As I stepped into the boardroom, I could feel the weight of the moment pressing on my shoulders. The long, polished table gleamed under the bright lights, and I could see the board members seated at the far end, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. I glanced at my team, their faces reflecting a blend of nerves and determination. This was our moment to shine, to prove that our vision was not just a fleeting idea, but a roadmap to success. I took my place at the head of the table, inhaling deeply to steady myself. I started the presentation with a quick recap of our journey. I talked about the hurdles we had overcome, the innovative strategies we had implemented, and how we had transformed challenges into opportunities. With every slide I clicked through, I could see the board members leaning in, their interest piqued. I made sure to highlight the metrics we had achieved: growth in user engagement, increased sales figures, and positive feedback from our clients. It felt good to speak about our accomplishments, to remind everyone of the progress we had made together. But I knew that numbers alone wouldn't convince them. I had to tap into the heart of what we were doing, the passion that fueled our efforts. I shared stories of our team's late nights, the brainstorming sessions filled with laughter and creativity, and the moments when we pulled together to solve problems. I emphasized how each member brought something unique to the table, creating a tapestry of ideas that reflected our shared vision. I could feel the atmosphere shift slightly. I sensed the board beginning to see us not just as a team, but as a group of dedicated individuals working toward a common goal. As I wrapped up, I opened the floor for questions. The tension was palpable as the board members exchanged glances. Finally, one of the senior board members, a seasoned executive with decades of experience, raised his hand. "What do you believe sets your leadership apart from your predecessor?" he asked, his tone serious but not unkind. I took a moment to gather my thoughts. "I believe in collaboration," I replied, looking him directly in the eye. "I want to hear everyone's ideas and perspectives. I think that diversity of thought leads to innovation, and I'm committed to fostering an environment where every voice is valued. Unlike before, I'm not here to dictate, but to inspire." I could see the board member nodding slowly, and I felt a surge of confidence. Maybe I was getting through. The questions continued, and I could sense a shift in the energy of the room. The board members were engaging, and I felt like I was finally breaking down the walls of skepticism that had been built up over the months. But just as I began to feel optimistic, I noticed Tom, the former CEO, sitting in the corner. He had been unusually quiet, but I could sense his tension. His eyes were fixed on me, and I wondered what he was thinking. As the meeting progressed, I could see the board's attitude changing. They were asking about our future plans, how we intended to scale our operations, and what new initiatives we envisioned. I answered each question with enthusiasm, sharing our roadmap for the next quarter and how we plan to innovate further. I could feel the momentum building, the excitement in the room palpable. But just as I thought we were turning a corner, I caught Tom's glare. It was almost as if he was silently challenging me, trying to undermine my confidence with his presence alone. I had to remind myself to stay focused, to not let his negativity seep into my thoughts. I was here to lead, not to be intimidated. Finally, after what felt like hours, the meeting came to a close. The board members exchanged glances, and I held my breath, waiting for their decision. The chairperson leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "Thank you for your presentation. We'll take this information into consideration and we'll get back to you shortly." With that, we stood up, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me, even amidst the uncertainty. As we walked out of the boardroom, I turned to my team, who looked exhilarated. "We did it!" I exclaimed, feeling a rush of pride. They cheered, and it felt like a moment of victory, even though we were still waiting for the final verdict. But in the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Tom was still in the office, and every time I passed him, I felt a flicker of tension. I knew he was waiting for the board's decision, hoping they would side with him. The atmosphere grew thick with anticipation, and I tried my best to maintain a positive outlook, rallying my team and keeping morale high. Then, one afternoon, I received a call that changed everything. It was the chairperson of the board, and my heart raced as I answered. "We've made our decision," he said, his voice steady. "After careful consideration, we believe you are the right leader for this company moving forward. We're promoting you to CEO." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. I was ecstatic, but I also felt a pang of sympathy for Tom. I knew this would be a hard blow for him, and I wasn't one to gloat. But I also understood that this was a culmination of all our hard work. I hung up the phone, my head spinning with the implications of this news. I was about to step into a new chapter of my career, and everything I had worked for was finally within reach. But a part of me wondered how this change would affect my relationships with my team and with Tom. How do you navigate such a significant shift in power dynamics? I knew the road ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to embrace it, determined to lead with integrity and compassion. I took a moment to collect my thoughts, staring out of my office window at the sprawling city below. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden hue over everything, and it felt like a sign of hope and new beginnings. I had always envisioned this moment, but now that it was real, I realized it came with a weight I hadn't anticipated. The excitement of the promotion was mingled with trepidation. How would my team react? Would they see me as their ally or as an authority figure to be challenged? I decided to call an all-hands meeting the next day. I wanted to address the team directly, to reassure them that my promotion didn't change my commitment to our vision or our collective goals. I spent the night drafting my thoughts, aiming for a balance between humility and confidence. I wanted them to understand that while I was stepping into this new role, I was still one of them. We were in this together. The next morning, I walked into the conference room, a bundle of nerves and excitement. Faces turned toward me, some curious, others apprehensive. Tom was there, sitting toward the back, his expression unreadable. I took a deep breath and began. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I have some news to share that I hope will be a positive step for all of us. I've been appointed as the new CEO of our company. I could see the surprise ripple through the room. Some nodded in approval, while others exchanged glances that spoke volumes. Tom's face was a mix of disbelief and something else I couldn't quite place. I continued. I want to make it clear that this decision was not just about me. It's about all of you and the incredible work we do together. I'm committed to fostering an environment where everyone's ideas are valued, and I hope we can continue to innovate as a team. As I spoke, I tried to connect with each person in the room, making eye contact and using their names when possible. I wanted them to feel my sincerity. I know that change can be unsettling, and I want to hear your thoughts, your concerns, and your ideas. My door is always open. I emphasize the importance of collaboration and encourage them to share their thoughts during the meeting. The atmosphere shifted as people began to respond. Some expressed excitement, while others voiced concerns about how my promotion might change our company culture. I welcomed each comment, trying to be reassuring while also acknowledging their fears. I could feel Tom's eyes on me, and I knew he was processing everything differently. After the meeting, I noticed Tom lingering by the coffee machine. I approached him, heart pounding. "Hey, Tom, can we talk for a minute?" He glanced at me, a flicker of something, perhaps regret, crossing his features. "Sure," he replied, his tone neutral. We stepped into a quieter corner of the office. "I know this change isn't easy," I started, careful to keep my tone light. "I genuinely value your input and experience. I'd love to work together to ensure our team keeps thriving." He crossed his arms, his posture defensive. "You know I didn't think you could handle this role, right?" I nodded, not surprised by his honesty. "I'm aware of that, but I hope I can change your mind. I want to build a team where every voice matters, including yours." He was silent for a moment, and I could see the internal battle he was fighting. "It's just, I've put in so much time here. I don't want to be sidelined," he finally said, vulnerability breaking through his bravado. I smiled softly, wanting to connect with him on a human level. "You won't be. You have so much to offer, and I need your expertise. Let's turn this around together." To my surprise, Tom uncrossed his arms. "Okay, let's see where this goes," he replied, a hint of reluctance in his voice. I felt a small victory, but I knew it was just the beginning. The landscape of our office had shifted dramatically, and I needed to tread carefully. As the weeks passed, I threw myself into my new role, and the initial shock began to fade. I focused on team-building activities, brainstorming sessions, and open forums for ideas. I wanted to create a culture where everyone felt empowered to contribute, to innovate, and to challenge the status quo. Slowly, I began to see the team come together, their trust in me growing as I demonstrated my commitment to their success. Yet, Tom remained a wild card. He seemed to oscillate between being supportive and withdrawn. There were days when he was a great ally, actively participating in meetings and offering constructive feedback. Then, there were days when he would barely speak, retreating to his office with a look of frustration etched on his face. I knew I had to address this head-on. One afternoon, after a particularly productive brainstorming session, I found him sitting alone, staring blankly at his computer screen. "Tom," I said gently, "can we talk?" He looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Sure, what's up?" I took a seat across from him, hoping to create an open space for dialogue. "I've noticed you've been a bit distant lately. I want to understand what's going on. Are you feeling overwhelmed?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's just, I've been here for years, you know? I thought I'd have a shot at the top position one day, and now it feels like I'm just here." I nodded, empathizing with his feelings. "I get it. This transition isn't easy for anyone, especially for you. But I want you to know, you're still a valuable part of this team. Together, we can achieve so much more." Tom met my gaze, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. "All right, I'm willing to give this a shot," he said, his voice steady. Relief washed over me. I was beginning to see that rebuilding trust and camaraderie would take time, but it was a journey worth taking. As I walked away from his office, I couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. I was not just leading a team, I was fostering relationships, and every small step counted. I knew we still had challenges ahead, but I felt prepared to face them head-on, together. The following days passed in a whirlwind of activity. I was determined to solidify the team's morale, and I could feel the energy beginning to shift. Tom's re-engagement was just the first step. I arranged more team meetings, encouraging open dialogue and brainstorming sessions. The office that once felt like a battleground started to transform into a space buzzing with ideas and collaboration. It was exhilarating to see my vision for a united team begin to take shape. But as I dove deeper into my role, I found myself wrestling with the expectations that came with it. The pressure was mounting. Investors were looking to me for direction, and I often questioned whether I was truly ready for this responsibility. I'd lie awake at night, my mind racing with thoughts of strategy and potential pitfalls. I wondered if I could rise to the occasion and lead the company to new heights. Were my instincts strong enough? Was I making the right decisions? One afternoon, as I walked through the office, I overheard two employees chatting in hushed tones. Their expressions were serious, and curiosity piqued my interest. I paused just outside the conference room, straining to catch snippets of their conversation. "Have you heard about the upcoming pitch?" one of them asked. "I heard they're bringing in some big names to assess us." That caught my attention. I had been so focused on internal dynamics that I hadn't fully considered how our work would be viewed externally. I took a deep breath and walked into the room, ready to steer the conversation. "Hey, everyone, I just heard about the pitch. Can we discuss what we want to present?" The atmosphere in the room shifted immediately. Ideas flowed as we brainstormed together, excitement palpable in the air. I felt a rush of adrenaline. This was what I thrived on. As we collaborated, I realized that each of us had something unique to contribute, and when we combined our talents, we could create something extraordinary. As the pitch date approached, I threw myself into preparations. I worked closely with the marketing team to refine our presentation, ensuring that we highlighted our innovations and strategic vision. The night before the pitch, I gathered my thoughts, pacing around my apartment. I rehearsed my lines, fine-tuning every word to convey confidence and clarity. I knew that this would be a critical moment for us, one that could either propel us forward or leave us stagnant. The day of the pitch arrived, and the atmosphere in the office was electric. My team rallied around me, their faces a mix of nerves and excitement. I felt a sense of responsibility wash over me. I wasn't just representing myself. I was representing every single person in that room who had invested their time and effort into this project. As we gathered in the conference room, I looked around, taking in the supportive expressions of my colleagues. It was a reminder that we were in this together. The investors arrived, and I greeted them with a smile. They were a mix of familiar faces and new ones, and I could sense their expectations. The presentation began, and I took the lead, speaking passionately about our vision, our growth, and the incredible potential ahead. I made eye contact with every investor, gauging their reactions as I spoke. Midway through, I noticed one of the investors leaning back in her chair, a skeptical expression on her face. My heart raced. I could feel the weight of her gaze, and I knew I had to pivot my approach. I shifted the focus to the data we had gathered, emphasizing our successes and laying out our roadmap for the future. By the end, I felt a swell of pride. We had presented not just facts and figures, but a narrative of resilience and innovation. When we finished, the room erupted in applause. I could hardly believe it. The investors began discussing among themselves, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had done it. We had done it. As we stepped out of the conference room, my team surrounded me, their faces lit up with excitement and hope. We had come together to create something that could change the trajectory of our company. But just as the celebratory atmosphere began to settle in, I overheard a familiar voice. It was Mark, the former CEO. He had been lurking at the edges of our celebration, and I felt a knot form in my stomach. I had hoped we wouldn't cross paths again, but there he was, watching us with an expression that was hard to decipher. "Nice job, everyone," he said, clapping slowly. "But don't get too comfortable, the real work has just begun." His words hung in the air, a stark reminder of the challenges that still lay ahead. I felt the tension rise, but I knew I couldn't let him undermine our hard work. I turned to my team, determined to keep their spirits high. "Let's focus on what we can control," I said firmly. "We've got a great foundation. Now we build on it." That moment with Mark was a bitter reminder that while we had made significant strides, the journey was far from over. As I left the office that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that the stakes were higher than ever. But with each challenge that came our way, I felt more resolute. We were a team, and together, we could face anything. I was ready to lead us into the next chapter, no matter what it held. As I drove home that night, the city lights blurred into streaks of color, mirroring my tangled thoughts. The adrenaline from the day's victory mixed with a simmering anxiety about what lay ahead. I parked my car, took a deep breath, and stepped into my apartment, the walls echoing my doubts and triumphs. I poured myself a glass of wine, hoping to quiet my racing mind, but all I could think about was Mark's presence, the way he seemed to loom larger than life, even in his defeat. The next morning, I woke up with determination. I had a vision for the company, and it was time to turn that vision into reality. I gathered my notes and headed to the office early, wanting to get a head start on the day. My team arrived one by one, and the atmosphere felt electric. We were all eager to dive into our next project, but I knew it was essential to address the elephant in the room. Mark. "All right, team," I began, standing at the head of the conference table. "I know we've all been through a lot recently, and Mark's comments might still be lingering in our minds, but I want us to remember the strength we've shown. We've come this far because of our ideas, our hard work, and our belief in each other. Let's channel any negativity into fuel for our next steps." I saw nods of agreement, and it felt good to be the leader they needed. We spent hours brainstorming and refining our strategies, the air thick with creativity and collaboration. Every idea was welcomed, and I made it a point to encourage even the shyest voices in the room. As the day wore on, I could feel the momentum building, and I was proud of how far we had all come. But as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow through the office windows, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was a message from the board of directors requesting a meeting for the following day. My heart raced as I wondered what this could mean. Did they want to discuss our progress, or was there something more sinister at play? That night, I struggled to sleep, my mind racing with possibilities. I replayed every moment since taking over as CEO, questioning whether I was truly ready for this role. I knew what Mark would say if he were here, mocking my every move, but I couldn't let that influence me. I had to trust myself and my team. The next morning, the atmosphere in the boardroom felt different. The directors were all present, their expressions unreadable. I took a deep breath as I sat at the head of the table, ready to present our progress and plans. As I spoke, I tried to read their faces, gauging their reactions. The more I spoke about our achievements, the more confident I felt. I was in my element, and I could see that they were engaged. After I finished, I sat back, waiting for their feedback. There was a pause, and then one of the directors, Lisa, leaned forward. "You've made impressive strides, but we need to discuss our strategy moving forward. Mark has reached out to us, and we need to know how you plan to address potential conflicts." The mention of Mark's name felt like a punch to the gut. I took a moment to gather my thoughts. "I appreciate your honesty, Lisa. I believe we need to focus on our strengths and maintain open communication. Mark's influence may have been strong, but I have faith in our direction and our team." The discussion continued, and I felt a wave of reassurance wash over me. I had prepared for this moment, and I was ready to defend our vision. By the end of the meeting, I felt like I had not only proven my point, but also earned the respect of the board. They seemed satisfied and even inspired by our plans. As I left the room, I felt a sense of relief and accomplishment. But just when I thought things were settling down, I received another email, this time from an unknown sender. Curiosity piqued. I opened it, only to find a series of articles discussing Mark's recent behavior. They painted a picture of a man who was struggling to adapt after losing his position. I felt a mix of pity and vindication. He had spent years belittling others, and now the tables had turned. Days turned into weeks, and I focused on solidifying our company's foundation. The team thrived under the new leadership, and I was proud of our progress. Yet, I couldn't help but notice Mark lurking on the fringes of our success. He was still connected to the industry and had a way of inserting himself into conversations, always casting doubt on my leadership. One afternoon, as I was preparing for a major presentation with an important investor, I received a phone call from an old colleague. "Have you heard the news?" she asked, her voice laced with excitement. "Mark's been let go from his new position. The board couldn't handle his attitude." A rush of emotion surged through me. Relief, validation, and a twinge of sorrow. I had never wished for anyone to fail, but the irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. Mark had always underestimated my resilience and my ability to lead. Now, he was facing the consequences of his own actions. As I prepared for the presentation, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready to show the world, and especially Mark, that I was more than just a name on a door. I was a leader, and I had the support of my incredible team behind me. We were not just building a company. We were creating a legacy. And as I stepped onto that stage, I knew that this was just the beginning of what we could accomplish together. I took a deep breath as I stood at the podium, the lights dimming slightly, focusing all attention on me. The conference room was filled with faces, some familiar, others new. But all of them were here because they believed in our vision. I could see my team in the front row, a mix of excitement and nervous energy radiating from them. This was our moment, and I was determined to seize it. With each word I spoke, I felt the weight of the past months lift off my shoulders. I talked about our innovative solutions, our commitment to sustainability, and how we plan to disrupt the market. I shared stories of our struggles, the late nights, the brainstorming sessions that seemed to go nowhere, and the sheer tenacity of our team. As I spoke, I could see nods of understanding and agreement from the audience, and it fueled my confidence. But amid the adrenaline and excitement, there was still the ghost of Mark hovering over me. I imagined him in the audience, smirking at my every misstep. But today, there would be no missteps. I was resolute in my conviction, and I would not let his past mockery cloud my determination. I had prepared for this moment, and nothing would take that away from me. When I wrapped up my presentation, the applause was thunderous. I could hardly believe it. I had connected with them, and I knew the investor felt it too. After a quick Q&A session where I confidently addressed concerns and questions, the investor leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You've got something special here," he said. "I want to talk about the future." Those words felt like a warm embrace, a validation of everything I had worked for. But before I could bask in that moment, I remembered that this was just one step on a long journey. The investor wanted to meet with me in private after the presentation, and my heart raced with both anticipation and anxiety. As the crowd dispersed, I made my way to the back room where the investor awaited. He was a seasoned professional, someone whose opinions could make or break careers. "I was impressed by your vision today," he began, his tone serious but not unkind. "But I want to hear about your plans for leadership. How do you plan to guide your team through the next phase?" I took a deep breath, recalling every late-night discussion I'd had with my team, every brainstorming session where we'd challenged each other to think bigger. "Leadership isn't just about making decisions," I replied. "It's about building a culture where everyone feels valued, where their ideas matter. I want to create an environment where my team can flourish, innovate, and feel ownership of our mission." As I spoke, I could see the investor nodding, and I realized this was more than just a pitch. This was a conversation about values, and I felt a surge of passion for what we were building. After what felt like an eternity, he smiled. "I think you're ready. I'd like to offer you the CEO position of the new venture." The words hung in the air like a breathtaking promise. I could hardly process what I had just heard. I was going to be a CEO. I felt a mix of disbelief and elation wash over me. "Are you sure?" I asked, needing to hear it again. "Absolutely," he said. "You have the vision, the passion, and the team to back it up. Let's take this to the next level." In that moment, everything I had endured, the late nights, the doubts, the derision from Mark, faded away. I had fought for this, and now it was within my grasp. As I walked out of that room, I felt like I was floating. I was met with the excited chatter of my team, who had been waiting anxiously outside. They could see it in my eyes before I even spoke. "Did you get it?" one of my colleagues asked, her voice trembling with anticipation. "I did," I said, allowing a smile to break across my face. "I'm the new CEO." The eruption of joy from my team was the sweetest sound. We embraced, we laughed, and we celebrated not just my achievement, but our collective journey. I couldn't help but think of Mark and how he had dismissed my potential, his mocking laughter echoing in my mind. It felt good to know that I was proving him wrong, but more importantly, I was validating my team and the hard work we had all put in. As the weeks passed, I settled into my new role. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about fostering the talent and creativity of those around me. I held meetings where everyone's ideas were welcomed, and we brainstormed solutions together. I was dedicated to cultivating an inclusive environment, one where every voice mattered, and I could already see the magic happening. But then, one day, I received a message that rattled me. It was from a former colleague who had stayed in touch with Mark. "He's not taking your promotion well," she warned. "He's been talking about how he could have done a better job." I felt a pang of disappointment. Mark's inability to recognize others' strengths seemed deeply entrenched in his character. I took a moment to reflect on the situation. His behavior was not my concern anymore. I had my own path to forge, and I was determined to do it with integrity and the support of my team. As I embraced my new role, I realized that this journey was not just about success or proving a point. It was about building something meaningful and lasting. I wanted to lead in a way that inspired others to believe in themselves and their ideas, just as I had finally learned to believe in mine. That realization brought me joy. I could feel the momentum building, and I was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Each day was a new opportunity to grow, to inspire, and to create a culture of collaboration and respect. I had not only risen above Mark's mockery, but had transcended it, choosing to focus on what truly mattered. I was on my way to becoming the leader I had always wanted to be, and that felt incredible. As I stood on the precipice of this new chapter, I realized that the road ahead wouldn't be without obstacles. The excitement of my new role brought with it the weight of responsibility, and I could feel the eyes of my team on me, eagerly anticipating my leadership. I wanted to be the kind of leader who not only guides, but also lifts others up. I began to implement changes slowly, starting with open discussions in our team meetings. I wanted to create an environment where everyone felt safe to share their ideas without fear of ridicule. I encouraged brainstorming sessions where the wildest thoughts were welcomed, and I made it a point to recognize each contribution. The energy in the room shifted. I could see the spark in my colleagues' eyes as they began to engage more freely. It was a beautiful transformation, and I knew we were building something special together. But not everyone was on board with my vision. Some team members, particularly those who had worked closely with Mark, were hesitant to embrace my leadership style. I remember one meeting vividly when Sarah, a talented designer, spoke up hesitantly. "I'm used to a different approach," she said, glancing around the room. "How do we know this will work?" Her question lingered in the air, and I could feel the tension rise. I took a deep breath, remembering my own struggles and the importance of this moment. "I understand that change can be daunting," I replied, "but I believe that every single one of us has something valuable to offer, and it's our job to nurture those ideas. If we work together, I truly believe we can create something extraordinary." I saw Sarah nod slowly, and for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope that I was breaking through the barrier. Little by little, I noticed the wall of skepticism beginning to crumble. As the weeks went by, I made it a point to reach out to each team member individually, encouraging them to share their thoughts and feedback. I listened and I learned. There were moments of doubt, of course. Some days, I questioned if I was doing the right thing. I thought of Mark and his relentless pursuit of perfection. Would I ever be able to escape his shadow? But then I remembered that I was not trying to be Mark. I was carving my own path, and I had to trust in my vision and my team. One afternoon, while I was working late, I noticed a small group gathered in the corner of the office. Curiosity piqued. I approached them, only to find that they were collaborating on a project that had initially been dismissed. Their excitement was palpable, and they were bouncing ideas off one another, their creativity flowing freely. I was overcome with pride. This was what I had hoped for, a culture of collaboration. As we moved further along in our projects, I made it a priority to celebrate our wins, no matter how small. I introduced monthly gatherings where we would share not just our successes, but also the lessons we learned along the way. It was a time for us to bond, to reflect, and to appreciate the collective journey we were on. I wanted each person to feel valued, to know that their contributions mattered. Then came the day of our big presentation to upper management. It felt surreal, the culmination of all our hard work laid out before us. I could feel the butterflies in my stomach as I stood in front of the room, my colleagues flanking me, each of them radiating confidence. I looked at them, feeling a rush of gratitude. I had once doubted my ability to lead, but here we were, a team ready to shine. As I began to speak, I felt an unexpected sense of calm wash over me. I shared our project, highlighting the collaborative effort that had gone into it. I could see the nods of approval from the management team as I articulated our vision and the process we had undertaken. But what made this moment truly special was that I didn't just talk about the project. I acknowledged the individuals who had contributed their ideas, their time, and their passion. I felt a surge of pride as I named Sarah, Tom, and Lisa, shining a light on their efforts. When we finished, the room erupted in applause. It was a moment of validation, not just for me, but for everyone on my team. Upper management was impressed with our work, and I could see the respect in their eyes. It was a victory we had earned together, and I knew this was only the beginning. In the days that followed, I felt a shift in the atmosphere at work. The camaraderie was palpable, and I no longer felt the weight of doubt hanging over me. Instead, I felt a sense of belonging. I had found my place among my team, and together we were creating something beautiful. As I reflect on this journey, I realize how far I've come. From the uncertainty of my early days, feeling overshadowed by Mark, to standing confidently before my team and upper management, I have learned that leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about lifting others, believing in them, and creating a culture where everyone feels empowered to contribute. So, what would you do if you found yourself in a similar situation? How would you handle the challenges of leadership? I'd love to hear your thoughts below. This experience has taught me that we all have our struggles, but it's how we respond to them that defines us. I am grateful for every challenge I faced, as they have shaped me into the leader I am today. And as I look to the future, I know there will be more hurdles to overcome. But now, I'm ready. With my team by my side, I believe we can conquer anything. Together, we are unstoppable.